Welcome to the Crazy Canuck Truckin' Podcast. We are so glad you are all here. We so much appreciate the fact that you follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Crazy Canuck Truckin'. And you can email us at crazycanucktruckin@gmail.com anytime you'd like to make comments, suggestions. Ooh, and don't forget, wherever you listen to podcasts, make sure you give us a 5-star rating. We appreciate that very much. And by we, maybe I should tell you who that is. First and foremost, my name is Bridget. I'm the Size Matters Dakotan, and I work with
the Crazy Canuck Dave. Hey, Size Matters. In our areas, it's a little warm these days. Not a lot of water, but a little warm, and that must be keeping you on your toes with your job.
Well, I would, as someone who works in farming and agronomy, I would tell you that right now, I would really like to see rain in a lot of places. I have some farmers that would be happy just to see hail, wipe it all out, make it go away.
You know, it's getting drastic when they're wanting that, right?
Yes, very much so.
We have, Size Matters, we have somebody that we've talked about many times, and she is always on our show notes, and she is the one doing all of our social media because we're old. We don't understand the social media stuff. And this young lady, I always refer to her as VIP. It's Victoria Pollock, and she runs a company, Redesign Social. And we are going to let her introduce herself today and tell everyone a little bit about her business and what she does. So take it away, VIP.
Hi, I'm Victoria Pollock with Redesign Social, and we help businesses engage with their target audience and turn them into clients. And we do that through Facebook and Instagram ads with content creation and ads management.
So why did you get into this stuff, VIP? What started this for you?
Mostly, I've always wanted to do freelance work so that I could have the opportunity to do other things and have a flexible schedule. But as you can hear, my 6-month-old son, I wanted to be a stay-at-home mother so that I could take care of him and teach him the stuff I learn and learn with him. So, yeah.
That's awesome. And we don't mind hearing some baby noises, you know, that's all good, you know, and so thank you very much, VIP.
You know, it reminds me when we were kids growing up in church, and I just remember parents were always petrified when kids made noise in church. And we had a minister at one time who said, don't worry about that. It just means that there are young people in church, and that's the lifeblood of your church. So that's pretty awesome when you get to hear that background noise and it's a baby.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what is our 10 code today, Bridget?
So I always get to choose one, and this week we're going to use 1024, which means completed last assignment. But I understand that had a little special resonance for you, Dave.
It did. Recently I got a call from somebody that has helped me a ton in the last, I don't know how many years. One thing we don't talk about a whole lot is that when there's brain injury, when there's different thing, you know, when you're off work because of work-related injuries or head injuries in my case, then financially times are really tough. And there's people that are very helpful in those times. And this lady, Denise, she was our branch manager for the credit union in town, Niverville Credit Union, a landmark branch. And I've known Denise since she was a teller, and she calls me one of her twins because we should be triplets actually, because there's 3 of us that are the same age, same month, very close to the same day. And she helped us immeasurably during tough times and really helped us. And I was so honored that she gave me a call the other day and said, David, I just want to tell you, I'm retiring. And that was very special. And she has experience with, in the family with brain injury and trauma that I've gone through and what her family has gone through. So she We've actually, this might be a little different, but there's been some tears shed in her office, both because of my situation and our family situation and her situation. So, and another one is one that our guest will be familiar with, and that is Debbie Zajaros. She was running North End Spring out of Winnipeg and saw a message that she is retiring and going to spend time with her grandkids and at the cottage and stuff. So without further ado, I am going to introduce Mr. Terry Shaw. He is somebody, he's the executive director of the Manitoba Trucking Association. He regrets every single day that he gave me his cell phone number, and that I call, because I call him up once in a while and harass him. Well, call it harass, but he's a really nice guy. He's our executive director. He does all of the government liaison and planning and priorities for the association. He's a tremendous guy, and we're very honored to have him on the podcast. Thank you, Terry. Say hi to us to start with. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you guys for having me. This has been fantastic. And you are correct, Dave. Regret is maybe a bit of a strong term, but yeah, you bet that's, you know what, genuinely, I appreciate the updates from the road. And so I look forward to hearing from you. So thanks again for this outreach as well. This is great.
Bridget, you realize I'm just a truck driver, right? Mm-hmm. But Terry is running the Manitoba Trucking Association, and I don't know of any other trucking association in Canada, with the exception of the one in Nova Scotia, that will take a phone call from just any regular driver and talk to them. So it's really special.
Yeah, the phone rings and we answer it, right? We don't, qualify, who's coming in or why. We just try and help, right? And so as an association, we're membership based. And so ideally we should be, responding to our member inquiries. But especially over the last couple of years, with all of the challenges that our frontline workers, our driving staff have seen through COVID, when the phone rings and somebody on the other end needs some help, you help them out. Right. And so, yeah, it's a real honor to be able to do that. And so, yeah, it's our pleasure. And again, call anytime, Dave. It's okay, man. Yeah.
So I have a couple questions. I usually do. One of them is exactly why is your name in shouty capitals?
Okay, I was waiting for the follow-up immediately so I could see if there was. So my name is in shouty capitals.
That way.
Yeah, that's what I was. See, I'm in government relations. That's what we do, right? Like we answer the questions we want to answer. So my name is in shouty capitals because Dave had the, again, has my cell phone number, and so he calls me, and I don't always catch him live, and so I return his call. And when I call him, for some reason, somehow, about a decade ago, when my cell phone got set up, when I made my way to the Manitoba Trucking Association, whoever set it up, set my name up as Mr. Terry Shaw in all shouty capitals. And so my cell phone has made a bit of a name for itself and or myself by, introducing me in shouty capitals very formally as Mr. Terry Shaw to those I call. So thanks for pointing that out, though. Yeah, I appreciate that.
I felt I should stand and curtsy. I wasn't really sure what this was all about, but I'm glad we've got a little clearer explanation right now. So thank you for that. Mm-hmm. My second question, though, is, there's folks that listen, but really have no idea what the Manitoba Trucking Association does and what you do. So on behalf of the non-knowing public, tell me more.
Yeah, for sure. So the Manitoba Trucking Association, we're an industry association, right? And so Dave alluded to our partners across Canada. So from BC through to the Atlantic provinces are 7 provincial trucking associations that come together to form the Canadian Trucking Alliance. And so, as I mentioned before, we're membership based. If you choose to invest or participate in your industry association, being a member of the trucking industry in Manitoba, then the Manitoba Trucking Association has got a home for you. We engage in a lot of functions, but our primary function, as Dave again alluded to, is government relations, also known as advocacy work or lobbying, right? There are a whole host of regulations out there our industry are subject to. Some of them work, some of them could use improvement. some of them are missing, and we need to see them implemented. And so it's my job through our board of directors. There's policy in place. I just don't decide what our industry wants or needs. Our industry does. I just get to be the spokesperson for that. Outside the lobbying work we do, we play a large compliance assistance or education role for our industry members. If you're not sure what compliance looks like, or if you're looking at doing things and you want to do them maybe in this way, in this area, but I'm not sure if that's right, you can call the MTA, ask us those questions while you focus on your business, which is, safety and efficiency and fuel economy and, all that good stuff. And we can answer those compliance questions for you. So we do education. We've got a health and safety program. We do industry events, but compliance assistance and lobbying are our primary functions as an industry association.
What has changed for you with COVID-19 as far as, everybody's working from home, but speaking about those kind of things that you're talking about, enlighten some of the people. I know a lot of what you've done for us as drivers, but tell us a little bit about how COVID-19 has changed and the things that you've done to help out the drivers.
Yeah. So the MTA, right? It's a team. I'm one of many, and that's just the MTA staff. There's 14 of us on staff, including our health and safety program staff. And again, we work on behalf of our 300 member companies that represent, by our estimate, 10,000 Manitobans in the trucking industry, be it truck drivers, maintenance staff, dispatch, sale, all that good stuff, right? So in terms of COVID, there was kind of the eras of COVID, right? And the initial era was, how do we do what we do? Can we cross the border? Can we drive here? How do we drive there? So that initial policy shock that we tried to get to you folks out on the front lines as quick and as easily and as effectively as we could, that's where we kind of kicked in. We had daily calls amongst the Canadian Trucking Alliance, because what's happening in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Ontario, Alberta companies need to know about, and vice versa, right? So as an industry group, we held national calls every day. And as a Manitoba government stakeholder ourselves, construction, the business council, the manufacturers, we met with government daily as well to find out what policy is occurring, what policy needs to occur, and what are some of the impediments to our industry to do our jobs, right? So masking policies in certain areas, where there are openings or closures or curfews in certain areas. That was what we had worked on communicating from the get-go. Once we kind of got through that initial shock, it was, how do we keep these people on the road safely? Where are they getting PPE? Where are they getting sanitizer? Again, what are the protocols that they need to know when they come home to keep themselves and their community and their families safe? How do they interact with the shippers and roadside enforcement and customs officers and all those other kind of elements that, again, we tried to get in place consistently, meaningfully, but reasonably, so people weren't kind of trapped in their trucks and unable to move. And unfortunately, there still was a lot of that. And then kind of that third era of COVID, I think we're in it now a little bit, is like, what comes next? How do we reopen? There's a lot of talk around border policy and vaccine passports and getting truck drivers vaccinated, and what happens if they choose not to be vaccinated, and all those other questions that kind of came with trying to reopen. So those were kind of, in my mind, a real quick kind of 3 eras of COVID that we lived through. And it was busy. Yeah. And trying to do government relations work, trying to hear from those on the road without being able to go to the truck driving championships and sit in a room and have dinner with 50 truck drivers, right? That's how I connect with truck drivers. That's how you and I got to develop our relationship in part, was by these kinds of events. And in the absence of them, again, I say it genuinely, hearing from those on the road, that's how we know what's going out on what's occurring on the road. In part, we still have our members, their dispatch and the corporate offices call us, but sometimes that, view through the windshield is important. And so we appreciate that input.
So you bring up something interesting for me, because I happen to live in North Dakota. So I want to ask about the reciprocity, if you will, between Manitoba and North Dakota when it came to the vaccine and trucking and so forth. Tell more about that, because I got to hear some of the headlines just by proximity of where I live.
Yeah, so it was again, there are so very few good news stories out of COVID, and so we thought that was a really good one. So again, during that kind of second era of COVID, around what comes next, there was a lot of talk, especially in Canada, especially in Manitoba, around vaccine supply. Right. And so there was a lot of folks wanting to get vaccinated. There was a lot of health protocols still in place because of a lack of vaccines, especially in Manitoba, that was impacting our truck driving staff. And so we advocated very early on for priority access to vaccines for frontline workers. Everybody was told, if you want to stay safe during COVID, stay home, except for truck drivers, because we still need stuff, right? And so we said that we're mixing our messages here. And so, we lobbied for a long time to get priority access for vaccines for our truck driving staff and our other frontline staff. Based on their public health policy and their understanding of COVID, Manitoba prioritized other at-risk groups, the elderly and those in communal living settings, and we get that. So we said, okay, but when truck drivers' time comes, you got to be able to vaccinate them efficiently, and I don't want to say on their own terms, but vaccinating them efficiently and successfully will mean you have to accommodate these folks who spend a lot of their time, some of them most of their time, away from Manitoba, right? So what does that look like? And credit to our provincial and state government partners, they phoned us one day and said, hey, if we could get truck drivers vaccinated away from home in the United States because they have excess vaccine supply, do you think truck drivers would be interested? And I said, I'd be shocked if they weren't. We made a handful of calls, and I think it was like a week later, truck drivers were getting vaccinated in North Dakota. So it was a pretty cool system. It shows the excellent relationship we have across border, especially, Manitoba and North Dakota. I think you two personify that in this podcast, in a small scale, but it worked out well. And so we're real proud to have been a part of it.
There was something I remember back near the beginning. You got into the hand sanitizer business. How did that end up going? I don't remember hearing more about that.
Yeah, the MTA, between masks and sanitizer, the MTA purchased, it was $100,000 of cleaning supplies for our industry members. Again, during COVID phase one, the sirens going off and everybody's freaking out. And so we told our industry members, we said, look, you focus on your drivers, you focus on keeping them rolling, you focus on training them up with the COVID protocols, et cetera. We'll do what we can with our contacts in the community to try and source some of this PPE that you want and need. And so, Aaron from our office, myself, Don Stewart, our business development guy, you give a sales guy a challenge, that involves, working with local breweries, and he just, he got it. And so he took some of his connections there, and we sourced a whole bunch of sanitizer, but we didn't have anything to put it in. And so we reached out to some local manufacturing connections, and we got containers, and it was just a whole process, and typically not something we do or get involved in. But again, at the end of the day, if our industry members have a need and we can help solve it, and our members say, go help solve it, then we do. And so we did. Yeah, it was, again, another interesting twist in COVID, but a really good news story.
There were so many interesting twists in COVID. Are you keeping score? Is there any way to tell all the things that have happened?
I just want a haircut, right? Like, that's all I just want to get a haircut. Yeah, it's been too long.
Look, I don't want to brag it up or anything, but again, I'm in North Dakota. I'm kind of freewheeling down here.
Well, and so that's, again, the challenge of being a truck driver, right? Is what I can do in Manitoba, or allow me to rephrase, what I can do in North Dakota is okay for North Dakotans. But when I hit that border and I tell them, yeah, I went out to a restaurant, I went shopping, no, you're a truck driver, you're supposed to be self-isolating. So we have actually heard from some members where that they've, just for doing what they're allowed to do in one jurisdiction, it gets them, in some hot water when they hit that border and try coming home. And so communicating that to these folks who are out on the front lines, who are just trying to do their job and live their life, that's been a huge challenge of COVID. It's constant communication right down to the front lines through, our corporate connections. So yeah, I hear you. I hear you though.
So when it comes to those corporate connections, is the majority of your membership the independent guys, or is it mostly the corporations? Who belongs to your association?
So so you have to be a company, right? We don't sell memberships to individuals. And the reason that is again, for a company, everybody always holds up Bison as the example, right? And so Bison purchases one membership. Wrong Bison. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Again, you get one membership per company, and that helps. Again, what we do as a lobby group is informed by our board decisions. And so what we don't want is 1,000 Bison employees having a bigger voice than 2 employees at small town trucking, right? So we sell memberships at the corporate level, and as a member, you can take advantage of all the MTA services under that umbrella. So we service all those 1,000 Bison employees, but Bison at the boardroom table gets the same voice and the same vote as the smaller folks, right? So to answer your question, we represent everybody, carriers and suppliers. You're all welcome as long as you are a company in Manitoba. You have to have a Manitoba National Safety Code number, unless you have a National Safety Code number in another provincial jurisdiction, at which point you have to be a member of that association before we'll let you come into ours, because we don't want to be mowing, our partners in other jurisdictions' grass, right? But we have members that own and operate one truck. Right through to, again, Bison and TransX, some of the biggest trucking companies in Canada. In terms of our supplier members, the usual tire folks and maintenance facilities and dealerships, right through to individual group benefits salespeople who want to engage with our industry members and other like folks. So yeah, we represent about 300 Manitoba companies, and that covers a broad spectrum of our industry: livestock haulers, aggregate haulers, local city cartage folks, right through to the big international haulers. I've got nothing but job security and a very diverse set of emails that I get every day. So it's great. We have a diverse industry, and our association is representative of that diversity for sure.
Okay.
So you didn't start your career as the executive director, obviously, I know you're good, but probably you didn't start at the top. So tell us, it's probably been a couple of years since you were in high school. Yep. Tell us what happened with Mr. Terry Shaw coming out of high school.
Yeah. So, coming out of high school. Yeah. Well, I grew up in Winnipeg, and coming out of high school, I figured I knew better than anybody else. And so I went to university for, I think it was a year and a half. I majored in playing pool and skipping class. And so that didn't last too long. And I actually became, believe it or not, I'm not proud to say this, I shouldn't be saying this while this is recording, but I became a door-to-door salesperson. I was really good at it. I got moved out to Toronto area. I did that for a couple of years, was feeding myself, paying the rent. And I just thought there's got to be, more to life than this. I think it was 18, 19 at the time. And so I moved back home. Went to Red River College, took their business administration program. I was going to become an accountant until I took my first accounting course and realized there is no way I'm going to become an accountant, but I finished the degree. I got a major in accounting, a minor in marketing. And I said, okay, well, what next? And a friend of mine was working at TransX. And so in 1996, I got a job at TransX Transportation as a log audit clerk. So no, I did not start anywhere near the top. I was a log cop for a couple of years, and that got me into dispatch and planning and customer service and sales. And I spent about 5.5 years at TransX. Went to workers' comp for just under a year. I knew some folks there, and I thought, well, let's see what the view away from trucking is, because TransX was really my first real job, right? Went to workers' comp. Didn't enjoy it. Went back to trucking, worked at Big Freight Systems out of Steinbach for a decade. And again, was working between their Winnipeg Steinbach offices when don't even know how it happened, but I heard that my predecessor, Bob Dolinick, was maybe looking at moving on. So I gave him a call. We had a coffee, and 10 years later, I'm Bob now, right? I'm the executive director of the Manitoba Trucking Association. So
Yeah, that's where I remember that transition time, because that's when I first started recognizing you and seeing you, like you said, at the Manitoba Trucking or Manitoba Truck Driving Championships, and that really was such a great way to see all the people at the MTA and get to know each other on a personal level. And I've had people sometimes say, "Well, what can the MTA do for me?" And I'm lucky. I get to hear a lot of the things that you guys actually do, and I know how much work you guys have done helping the trucking companies, your members, and all people driving through Manitoba. You've done a tremendous job helping out everybody because of the work you do, and there's far too many things to get into, but I remember you coming, and I knew Bob, and then it's like, oh, who's this young guy? I mean,
I
really
still
young.
get that 10 years later. I still get, where's Bob? Yeah, no, for sure. So just thanks for the kind words, David. But that's, I grew up in the industry, and as a log audit clerk, I worked a lot with truck drivers, right? I wasn't their favorite guy to see, unfortunately, but we always made it work, And so even to this day, 20 some odd years later, I deal with our board of directors primarily, and they're the company owners or the vice president, CEO, whomever they are, right? And it's just what an excellent opportunity to work with these, these caliber of people within our industry. But the flip side of that coin, though, is I still got plenty of time for our truck drivers, and I want to hear from them. And they're at the last time we had a truck driving championship, unfortunately a year and a half or whatever it was ago now, I still run into drivers that I used to work with, right? I still run into drivers that I have a relationship with, like yourself, right?
Does that truck driving championship cross the border at all? Because I know that North Dakota Motor Carriers has one similar to that, but I didn't know if there was an international version, if you will.
No. So unfortunately, our national version, we used to have the provincial truck driving championships, and then the best in class provincially would go to the Canadian nationals. We don't even have that anymore. It's truck drivers spend a lot of time away from home, and when they come home, some of them, what's the last thing you want to do? Well, get in a truck and drive around for a day, right? Like, so Dave is one of the the outliers that says sign me up for more, right? And so I think there's that. I think everybody's busy. There's competing corporate priorities. So unfortunately, our Manitoba event is going strong, and we're really looking forward to, seeing folks again post-COVID. But nationally, we struggled. And so I think internationally, I'm not too sure what would happen there. But based on our vaccine or our vaccination relationship, I think a Manitoba North Dakota championships would be pretty cool, right?
That would be fun.
Yeah.
Who says we have to go across Canada? Why don't we go across border?
Yeah. Regina is, I don't know how many hundreds of kilometers away, and Pembina is, 90 minutes, right? Like, so
we're kind of close,
Yep.
a little easy to get to.
I hear you. Yeah. And I can get my hair cut.
Right.
What I get out of the truck driving championships, what have you felt is some of the benefits to the truck driving championships?
So for me, where I live, right, the Minister of Infrastructure always makes time for the event, right? And so as a government relations opportunity, as a public relations opportunity, it's huge, right? The minister gets to come out, hear about what you folks are doing. We drag them out on as their schedule allows during the day. Sometimes they'll stop by and see you folks piloting those vehicles and, doing the serpentine and the figure eights. And I said, do that in your Subaru, right? Like you can't, and look at these folks, what they're doing in their truck and trailer combos, right? So there's that benefit. We get some media coverage from it. I get to connect with, our frontline driving staff and some folks, unfortunately, I only see once a year at the truck driving championships, right? It's an opportunity to build camaraderie for our industry across, corporate lines, right? And so our board comes together and, annually we've got our fall awards dinner, and, those are more for the back end staff and the office staff. And the truck driving championships is really those events for our frontline workers. And it's a great opportunity to bring them together, recognize them, and just showcase them. Again, the media and government relations aspect of it for me is huge. Yeah, it's really great.
As a driver, I've really loved getting together with the compliance people because they do a lot of the track. They're the track workers.
Yeah, I never even thought of that. Yeah.
Yeah, they help set up. And, sometimes as a truck driver, we don't really appreciate the inspectors and the scale operators and the police officers that check our trucks, because we seem to think that we know better about our trucks than these compliance people, safety officers. And I tell you what, if you think you are, I've run across this so many times, Terry, at truck driving championships. There will be some rookie come in and say, oh, the vehicle inspection will be no problem. I know how to inspect my vehicle. And what they do is they make 5 defects on your vehicle, and you have to find those 5 defects. And it doesn't seem like a big deal until you try to find those 5 defects. I think I've got a perfect score once or twice.
Yeah.
Like these guys know their trucks. And that's the biggest takeaway I've gotten, is that these police officers, these vehicle inspectors, the DOT guys, they know their stuff.
Yeah.
They're not all truck drivers, and they're not all a mechanic's background, but they know, and they make us look like fools every time.
So just on that point, that I don't disagree, and that's great. And we've got a good relationship with our, enforcement and oversight and, regulatory partners. Just so opportunities to come together like that, humanize those interactions, because sometimes they're quick, sometimes there can be confrontation. And so, one of the elements the MTA always pushes is safety is important, compliance is important, but you can educate one citation or one ticket at a time, or you can educate through opportunities like this, or other engagements. And if it's not an egregious repeat offender, maybe giving them the opportunity to walk away with, a bit of a, hey, here's how you should do it next time, might be the way to go, as opposed to a ticket or a shut, and so, education over enforcement when it comes to that road safety compliance is certainly an element we promote within reason, right? We've all got our jobs to do, and we've all got families that, we need to come home to, right? But that's part of, the benefit of that relationship too. And some of the charitable stuff we do, the convoy brings out our law enforcement partners. So those kinds of events have real value in that regard, for sure.
So far, we have talked about all the serious stuff, but you told me that you audited logbooks. So
I'm going to get any question you ask me wrong. Yeah.
What's the most egregious thing that you have seen in a logbook that made you stop and go, I can't tell if I'm horrified or in admiration?
Yeah. So again, keep in mind, it was in 96 and I don't remember what I had for breakfast today. Right. So I think maybe what I'll do instead is shine the light on me as opposed to any of our offenders. And I like a challenge, and my life is reading regulation and trying to make it work in the real world, right? And so, I'm a problem solver. I enjoy puzzles. And so when somebody told me my job is to find people who are non-compliant with their logs relative to what they do in the real world, oh man, challenge accepted. I ran home. I called up my mom. I said, Mom, I'm Columbo. I'm a trucking private eye. Like I just, and so I was finding guys with like 4.5 minute violations and stuff. And I'd call him in. His receipt said he was here. And, everybody said, kid, like, stop. We get it. you're good at this, but that's not the point. And so again, back to my previous comment around education over enforcement, the role absolutely needs to be about education and enforcement and reasonableness, right? So I'll shine the light right on myself as being the most unreasonable person that I ever encountered as a log audit clerk. Very early on, I got educated. I was a young kid, and I was given a problem to solve, and I took the wrong approach to it. But yeah, it helped inform my later activities as the executive director for sure.
Imagine if you were doing that in '86 and you were trying to tell all these long haul old time truck drivers, you were off by 4.5 minutes. You probably wouldn't be sitting here today.
So I had my tie on, I had my, and they're, excuse me, sir. And I was, what was I, 20 or something? Like just so no life experience, right? And so to a lot of their credit, a lot of the drivers said, not only did my office coworkers, but the drivers said, okay, man, here's the realities of what you're seeing here. And they took the time to educate me, right? And so again, that in large part is why I've still got such longstanding, admiration and respect for, everybody in our industry, our truck drivers especially, right? Like you folks are good guys and you get it. And the skills you have and the time many of you are willing to take to help educate people, especially your peers, or that's 21-year-old punk with the tie that just called me in, right? Like it's pretty cool. And that's, again, I think why I fell in love with trucking all those years ago. It's a very interesting community full of a lot of opportunity, a lot of personalities, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you're right, because you want to come in and you want to be the enforcer, and then you realize there may have to be a dose of reality.
I have no idea what I'm talking about here, right? Yeah, no. So thanks for not dragging me through that window and out to your truck, and so that was part of the thing too. Was, hey kid, why don't you go for a ride along? Why don't you figure out what it's really like, right? And this should have taken 15 minutes, and it took you 18 minutes, and like no. Just listen to the folk in the truck. They know what they're doing. And and so that will serve you well, right? Developing those kinds of relationships, right?
It's good on you to actually learn that, because I know from the driver standpoint, when you'd get somebody really green into a position like that, then the talk literally was among the drivers. Yeah, we'll educate him, and he'll start to see the light, or he won't be around for very long.
Yeah, unfortunately, there was elements of that, right? And so it depends on the approach, and the approach I received by those I interacted with, and those I do interact with today. Dave, you call sometimes, and you're not always thrilled, right? But you're calling because you care, right? And you want somebody to know what's going on out on the road, right? And so you take the time to share that information. That's meaningful. That's important, right? Yeah.
Well, Bridget, I'll translate that a little bit. I call sometimes, and Terry's like, down boy, calm down.
Okay.
All right.
Did you get it all out? Do you feel better now? Okay. So what's the problem, Dave? Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Someone has to keep you from jumping off the emotional cliff. We all have those people in our lives that do that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's it's been good, but we've actually been on the radio a couple times together. In studio. And I've really appreciated our friendship over the years, and from a 21-year-old kid to an executive director, that's impressive.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a job, and it's a job I love, and it's a job I'm fortunate to have. There's 7 of me in Canada, and only 1 of me in Manitoba, and so it's pretty unique, and that to me makes it pretty special, and that's why I'm so protective of the association, because I have a great appreciation not only for my responsibilities and the opportunity I've been provided, but what it means to the folks out on the road who are just trying to earn a living by bringing us the stuff we need. Right. So it's pretty meaningful, and I take it very seriously, as do all of our, my fellow teammates, the staff, Danielle, who puts together all our events, and Aaron, who, runs the operations, and Dave, our policy guy, Susan in communications, our RPM team, and all our members who pay our salaries so that we can get out and do what we do for you folks. Right.
Yeah. Danielle was probably the first one I recognized year after year
Mhm.
because she was running the track for the truck driving championships.
Yep.
And
Danielle was the first person I hired when I joined the MTA. I had been there for about 2 weeks, and there was an opening in the MPI entry level driver training program, and she came to interview, and I learned everything I knew about the program from her during that interview. And so I said, yeah, you're probably the person that should have this job because I have no idea what you're talking about, but clearly you do, right? And so that
Right.
was 10, 11 years ago now. Yeah.
some of I know a couple of people that went through that program with her.
Yep.
Or she was a liaison for that, and they talk very highly of her.
Yeah, she's great. And again, in terms of passion for industry, one of the, at the MTA, I don't know, we have many staff, certainly not on the MTA side, that haven't worked in industry, right? Danielle worked in industry. Danielle's partner is a truck driver, right? I spent decades in industry. So we come by our work at the MTA very, honestly. We appreciate those in industry. We know those in industry, and so we work hard on their behalf.
So let's try and wrap up with something a little more lighthearted here. What do you have a favorite road trip or favorite trip of some kind you've been on? Obviously, it doesn't need to be in a truck, but some experience from being on the road somewhere that stands out in your mind.
Yeah, I when I was working at TransX, my now wife, then pretty blonde girl that I wanted to be my girlfriend, told me she was going to Mexico. And I said, great, me too. And I said, where are you going? She said, Mazatlan. I said, great, me too. I said, when you going? She said, in 2 weeks. I said, great, me too. And then so I went into work the next day and I booked 2 weeks off in 2 weeks. And I told my buddies, I said, okay, we got to figure out a way to get down to Mazatlan. And so we piled into the Jeep, me and 3 buddies, and we drove from Winnipeg to Mazatlan so I could meet this girl. And we did, and we had, a lovely time down there. And then when she went to get back on the plane, we said, okay, bye, we'll see you later. And then 52 hours, I think it was, or something gross, 70 hours or something in a Jeep straight home because we waited to the last minute. And hey, if we don't leave now, we're not going to get home in time for work on Monday. And so it was just the only thing we did was stop for gas and food. And we ate the food in the Jeep while driving. It was a horror show. Yeah. So no hours of service followed there. I certainly would have been in violation numerous times, but there was 4 of us driving. So I think we were compliant, if not overly hygienic. Yeah.
I now understand your ability to be a door-to-door salesman if you chalked 3 guys into a 70-hour car ride to Mexico from Winnipeg. I can't even talk people in here to go to like Sioux Falls. I mean, good Lord.
It was an adventure, and the first palm tree I ever saw, I'd never kind of been outside of Winnipeg other than my, traveling salesman days out in Toronto, and never been down south. And I say, hey, when we get to our first palm tree, I want to see it. And then so somebody poked me in the elbow, and I elbowed me in the ribs. I woke up, and there was a blizzard, and I said, what are you doing? And they said, look through the snow. And there's this poor little palm tree just hunched over, covered in snow. And I said, where are we? And we were in, I think it was Arizona or somewhere. And we said, like, does it snow here? We went and got gas. And she said, yeah, it snows every 20 or 30 years. And I thought, like, are you kidding me? Like the one time I come down here, it's in the middle of a snowstorm. So yeah. Anyway, c'est la vie.
They didn't only talk three people into going with them down to Mazatlan. It was strictly because he wanted to see Jolene down there.
Girl.
Right?
It's all about me. It's all about Joe. Yeah. So anyways, I don't know how many years later it is. We're happily married now, a couple of kids, and she's in the other room. And I just texted her to keep it down because I'm doing Dave's podcast. So yeah.
That's going to go over super well.
Gangbusters,
so
right? Yeah.
I wondered why your internet started kicking out.
Yeah.
People on the other side of the wall are pulling the plug.
Yeah.
And I never forget her name.
Well, I would hope so. Yes.
Jolene, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And I always think of that Dolly Parton song too. So
I was thinking the same thing. Yep.
Everybody always does. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, you're a recognizable couple. You have the Mr. Terry Shaw thing going on, and she has Jolene. So
I'm going to get her phone to say Mrs. Terry Shaw. And then if you thought she was unimpressed before, whoa, look out. Yeah.
Look at that.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. We can probably get VIP to help you with that.
There you go.
Probably.
Perfect.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Terry. I really appreciate you coming on with us, and we'll look forward to many more good times, and we'll keep trucking in our own areas and try to keep America and Canada moving, right?
You bet. I appreciate the interest. It's always great to chat. And so again, if you or anybody listening wants to learn more about the MTA, they can give me a call anytime. Again, I'm always happy to chat. Yeah. Thanks, folks.
Close us out, Bridget.
Thank you so much for your time today, Mr. Terry Shaw. And the most fun now is I'm never going to forget your wife's name either.
Yeah.
And the fact that you've just managed to simmer down just a smidge since you were that 20-year-old auditor. Thank you again. Everyone have a wonderful time listening to this episode. We hope you enjoy it. Don't forget to give us some rankings, ratings, and reply back to us on social media, as well as give a like to VIP and her business as well. So thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, folks.